The rope jerked hard enough to burn my palms. Pebbles rattled past my boots and vanished into the empty blue below. Above me, the edge of the cliff cut the sky like a blade, and my brother's face hovered there, grinning like a kid who'd just pulled a prank. The knife in his hand flashed once. Something went light in my chest. Then I heard him laugh. "Let's see you climb now." My name is Cole Bennett. I'm 52 years old. And that was the moment I learned what envy looks like when it grows teeth. Sit back and let me tell you how my own brother turned a hiking trail into a trap, and how I turned that cliff into his reckoning. Before we get too far, don't forget to subscribe and let me know where you're listening from. The world got very quiet after he said it. Not truly quiet. There was still wind, still the rasp of rope over rock, but inside my head, everything narrowed to the scrape of my boots and the ache in my fingers. The main line above me went slack, then tight, then slack again. I didn't think. I pressed my chest to the rock, searching for a groove, a bruise, a place where the earth remembered hands like mine. My right boot found a notch, my left boot smeared against nothing, and my fingers locked on a hold no wider than a coin. "Cole!" he shouted like an actor on a stage. "You good down there?" He wanted me to answer. He wanted my voice to float up and tell him I was scared, that I needed him. I didn't give him the line. I kept breathing through my teeth and felt for the backup strap I'd clipped to my belt, a short loop I always wore out of habit. I wasn't a pro. I was a stubborn old man who liked to prepare. That day, stubborn and prepared meant alive. The loop caught a nub in the stone. My chest pressed so close to the wall I could feel the cold sink into my ribs. I shifted weight inch by inch. The rope above scraped again, and I felt the fibers complain. He'd cut deep enough to make it sing. A small ledge waited to my left, nothing you'd notice from above, just a tongue of rock that stuck out like a blessing no one asked for. I counted down from 3, shifted my hips, and slid. My boot hit it, skidded, then stuck. I exhaled a sound that wasn't a word. "Wow," he called. "Tough day, huh? Shoulda trained more." The words rolled down the cliff and hit my back. He sounded amused, not worried. I tucked that away. Words are mirrors. When a man laughs while you're hanging over emptiness, he isn't your brother. He's the storm he decided to be. "Lower the spare," I shouted without looking up. We always packed one short line to haul. "Evan, spare line!" His footsteps shuffled at the edge. I heard a scrape, the sound of gear moving, but no rope fell. I imagined his face, the way he used to look at me when we were kids and I beat him to the mailbox, the way his cheeks would go hot with anger he pretended was a smile. "Hold tight," he finally yelled. "Let me check the pack." He was stalling. He wanted me to lose strength while he made his story. I used the time he gave me to look down. 50 feet below, the world fell into scrub and pale stone and a drop that did not forgive. I wasn't dying today, not by his hand. Not after what we'd already survived in this family. Boot by boot, breath by breath, I edged along the narrow lip until I reached a dent in the cliff big enough to crouch in. It was nothing. A mailbox stuck on the side of a building. But to me, it felt like a porch with a chair. I wedged myself there and shook the fire out of my forearms. He called again, louder for the benefit of anyone who might be listening. "Cole, where's the spare? Did you forget it? Man, you always forget stuff." I touched the small action camera clipped at my chest. I had started wearing it in the last year because I liked to show my daughter, grown and busy now, the silly way a hawk will stare you down from a rock, or how the sun drops behind the ridge like a coin slipping under a door. It was still rolling. I didn't plan for it to catch a man I'd shared a room with for 15 years, the boy who once cried when he broke his toy truck, standing at the edge of a cliff with a knife in his hand. 2 hikers appeared above him on the trail. I couldn't see them, but I heard their voices, bright, surprised, curious. "You guys good?" one called. "Emergency?" said the other. "Got it under control," Evan shouted too fast. "My brother's clumsy. He slipped. We're fine." He needed witnesses, but he didn't want questions. He didn't want anyone to lean over and see the rope with a half-cut belly, or hear me say the simple sentence that would ruin his life. He did this. I could say it now. I could scream it. But shouting on a cliff is a bad hobby. It makes people panic. So I kept my voice even and loud. Short line. Drop it now. A line finally came down, but it wasn't ours. It was yellow, not our dull blue. One of the hikers had tossed their coil forward, bless 'em. It swung toward me like an arm reaching through a window. I caught it on the second try and tied off with hands that still remembered 1,000 knots from 1,000 jobs. "Clip in," the hiker shouted. "We've got you safe. Take your time. We're going to bring you up slow." I felt the weight lift from my legs as they took the load. The cut rope above me sagged to the side like a dead snake. For a second I watched it swing, the raw, furry end dancing in the wind. That image stayed with me longer than it should. The belly of a rope looks like a wound when you've trusted it with your life. When I reached the top, 2 strangers grabbed my jacket and pulled me onto the dust. The world tilted and then held still. Evan stood 3 feet away, hands on his hips, face arranged in a reasonable concern he'd never practiced before. "You okay, man?" he asked the way bad actors ask questions. I looked at him for a long, quiet beat. The hikers were looking too. One had a phone in his hand. The camera on my chest blinked its red dot like a heartbeat. "I'm fine," I said. "Thanks." I added to the hikers, and I meant it with my whole heart. "No problem," one said. "We heard him yelling. Crazy." He glanced at Evan. "Bad place for jokes, dude." Evan laughed as if he were embarrassed. "Nerves," he said. "Panic. Sorry, guys." We all walked back down the trail together. The hikers kept up a friendly stream of chatter, like people do when they've just watched a stranger almost drop into an empty. Evan drifted behind us. I didn't turn my back on him more than I had to. At the parking area, we thanked the hikers again. They waved and drove off in a little red SUV with a bumper sticker about rescue dogs. When their taillights disappeared, the air went thin. Evan tossed his pack in the truck bed. "Close one," he said. "You should be more careful." "You brought a knife," I said. My voice surprised me. It wasn't angry. It was tired. He shrugged. "I always bring a knife." "You cut the rope." "You can't prove that." The sentence hung there, stupid and clean, like a sign on a door. He said it because he wanted me to hear the wall he thought stood between us. Proof. He didn't know there was a little red light blinking under my jacket, looking right at him. I drove us home in silence. He scrolled his phone like nothing happened. Twice he laughed at something on the screen. Once he typed fast enough to make his fingers blur. I watched him without moving my eyes. Men tell you who they are when they believe the world owes them. At my house, he shouldered his bag and lingered on the porch. "You gonna tell Mom anything weird?" he asked. Like we were still boys, and there was still a room down the hall with a lamp burning and soup on the stove. "Mom's gone," I said. He blinked. Then he smiled too quick. "Right, have it. Maybe don't tell Ellie then. She worries." "I tell my daughter the truth," I said, "even when it's ugly." He laughed without sound. "Don't be dramatic." He walked to his car, looked at me once over the roof, and drove away. The taillights rolled down the street like 2 red coins slipping under a door. I stood there until they vanished, and the porch light hummed in the quiet. The wood under my feet felt steady. My hands did not. Inside, I set the camera on the table and watched the climb again. Wind, stone, his laugh, the knife flashing in the sun, the rope belly going from hole to fur. My own breath heard through fabric. The yellow line swinging in from a stranger's hands. It felt like watching a movie where you know the ending but can't help, hoping the plot will change. It didn't. It never does. People are who they are when they think no one is watching. That day, someone was. I copied the file to a small drive, then to a second, then to an email I kept only for bad days. I wrote the date on a sticky note and pressed it to the inside cover of a manila folder. I printed a still frame where the knife caught the light. I printed another where the cut showed. I laid them side by side on the table and sat very still. A car door shut outside. A dog barked twice and stopped. Down the hall, a floorboard settled. Life continued at a steady pace while my heartbeat tried to sprint. I got up, made coffee, sat down again, and told myself to do the next thing and only the next thing. The next thing was breakfast with my daughter. Sunday morning, the diner with windows that faced the river. Ellie showed up with a scarf crooked at her neck and a smile she got from her mother. She hugged me too tight. "Dad, why do you smell like the woods?" she asked, laughing. "I was out yesterday," I said. "Windy up there." She ordered pancakes. I ordered eggs. We talked about small things first. Her landlord, the plant on her sill that never dies, the new kid at her office who thinks the copier makes coffee as well. Then she touched my hand. "Okay," she said. "Now tell me what's wrong." "I'm fine," I said. She didn't look away. "You talk slow when you're not fine." I could have poured the whole story across the table then. I could have told her about a cut line and a laugh tossed out into the air like it couldn't hurt anyone. But she had exams to grade that afternoon, and I didn't want to set a weight on her chest that would sit for days. I took the slow road. "I had a scare on the cliff," I said. "Slipped. 2 hikers helped me up, reminded me that good people appear when you need them." Her eyes went soft and shiny. "You scared me," she said and squeezed my fingers. "Don't go alone next time." "I won't," I lied, because I usually do and probably will again. When we said goodbye, she put both hands on my face and looked at me the way she did when she was 6 and checked that I wasn't joking. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," I said, which is not the same as saying nothing bad will happen. After she left, I drove out to the ranger station. I brought a box of donuts because habits make doors open easier. The young ranger with hair that fell into his eyes smiled like it surprised him. "You always bring the good kind," he said, lifting the lid. "Bribes are wrong," I said, "but sugar isn't." We talked about the wind on the ridge, a bear near the creek, and then I asked if any rescue calls came in yesterday. He shook his head. "Quiet," he said. "A lot of folks out, though. Cameras caught waves of them." "Cameras still running by the lot?" He nodded. "Yep, motion capture." "Why?" "Curious what times folks come and go this season," I said, and bought a laminated map I didn't need. We both agreed the map looked good. On the way home, I stopped at the gear shop 2 towns over. The bell on the door sang the same note it had for 20 years. The clerk had kind eyes. He asked what I needed. I ran a finger over coils I didn't want to touch. "New rope," I said. "Old one got damaged." "Bad day," he said. "This one's solid." He lifted a coil off the wall with a practiced hand. Taking a knife to a climb is like taking a lighter to a hay barn. Necessary sometimes. Scary always. "People bring what they bring," I said. On the counter sat a tray with free stickers that said, "Check your knots." I took 2. I stuck one in my toolbox when I got home. I put the other in the folder with the stills. Evening came quiet and early. I sat with the folder open and a pen in my hand and wrote down everything I wanted to forget later. The weather. The time. The color of the hiker's hat. The way my brother's voice didn't have tremble in it. I printed out a map of the trail and drew where the yellow rope fell. I wrote a list of names. The hikers, the ranger, the shop clerk, a neighbor who has a camera pointed at the street because someone stole a package once and he took it personal. The doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I stood up. Evan has a way of pressing buttons that makes the chime sound irritated. He came in without waiting for me to say he could. "You still mad?" he asked, blowing air like a man who has run across a street for no reason. "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm awake." He looked past me at the table and the paper spread. He saw the stills. He went still. "You're really going to be that guy," he said, voice round with contempt. "You're going to make a thing out of nothing." "I'm going to make a record out of what happened," I said. "That's different." "You can't prove it." He tilted his head like someone listening to a song he doesn't plan to like. "You can't prove what I was thinking." "I don't have to," I said. "Just have to show what you did." He smiled, then faded the smile like he remembered he shouldn't. "You gonna ruin family over a joke?" he asked. "You did," I said. We stood and looked at each other like strangers do when they both think they have the right of way. Then he shrugged, reached for the doorknob, and left without a goodbye. The word hung there anyway. I slept lightly that night. Not because I expected him to come back, but because the house holds new shapes when fear flicks lights on and off inside your head. I got up around 2 and stood at the window. A car rolled past, slow and soft, like a thought someone was trying not to think. It didn't stop. It didn't matter. I sat down in the chair near the door and let it hold me up. The next morning I went into town and bought 2 trail cameras. The cashier asked if I was hunting. "I'm watching," I said. I drove out to the cabin and walked the boundary line with the same pace I used when my father and I paced the same ground 40 years ago. Back then, we counted fence posts and he told me how to keep a level bubble between lines. Now I counted shoe prints near the side door and found one that wasn't mine. It was deeper than the rest and sharp at the heel. The mud held its memory like a face holds a slap. I set one camera in the trees facing the drive and one near the back where the porch sags in the middle, unless you stand just so. In the kitchen I checked the window latch that sticks when it rains. It moved clean. On the counter sat a matchbook I didn't leave there. The front read Cornerstone Bar and Grill in white on black. That place is 3 miles from Evan's apartment and 1 from a lot where he likes to pretend he knows the bartender. I slipped the matchbook in a bag, wrote the date, put it in the folder. I swept the floor slow and watched which dirt moved and which lines stayed. On the porch I sat and listened to the creek argue with itself. The air smelled like wood smoke. I waited until the sun slid behind the ridge and told me to drive home. 2 mornings later, a realtor called my cell. "Hi, Mr. Bennett. This is Angela from Ridgeview Realty. I got your email about listing the cabin, and—" "I didn't email you," I said. A pause. Paper rustled. "I have it right here. Says you want a quick sale, cash if possible. Says you're open to offers below market because it needs work." "Forward it," I said. "Please." She did. It read like a note my brother would write if you told him he had 5 minutes and a deadline. It used my name and misspelled my middle initial. It named prices that would make a man with debts smile. It came from an address that looked like mine if you squinted through water. I called her back. "Don't contact that address again," I said, "and don't put a sign on my land." "I'm so sorry," she said. "We get prank stuff sometimes. I didn't know." "You do now," I said. "Thank you for telling me." I printed the email, stapled the header with the origin line to the corner, and added it to the folder. I wrote one more name on my list, Angela. People who tell you the truth deserve their name on a line that doesn't end in a period. I met 2 friends for coffee that week. Pete, who owns a hardware store, and Ron, who has a dog that hates hats. They told me what they'd heard at the bar the night after the cliff. Evan telling a story with himself in the hero part. He said he saved me. He said I slipped because I'm out of shape. He said he was first to act, best to act, the only one to act. He asked for whiskey on the house and got it. People like to drink for heroes. "You want me to say anything?" Pete asked. "No," I said. "Just remember." He pulled his phone out and opened his voice recorder. "Say it again," he said, and I did. He nodded, hit stop, and slid the phone into his pocket like he was putting a gift away. On Friday, the ranger called. He said they could hold footage for a while, but not forever. I filed a request so it wouldn't vanish. The form asked why. I wrote, "Because memory lies when it wants to." On Saturday night, as I turned off the downstairs lights, I heard the soft metal sound of someone trying a backdoor lock like a dentist, testing a tooth. I didn't freeze. I got calm. I crossed to the kitchen and lifted the small bell I hang on a loop over the handle when I sleep. I set it down. I picked up my phone and walked toward the hallway where the light from the fish tank paints a thin stripe on the floor. The back door eked once, and then learned what a deadbolt feels like from the wrong side. There was a pause, then the careful sound of feet leaving a place they shouldn't have been. I stepped to the window and watched a shadow walk to the corner where the streetlight refuses to reach. It wasn't proof. It was a shape, but the bell on the counter shook from the echo. On Sunday, I visited Mrs. Daniels 3 doors down and asked what her camera sees. She's a teacher. She believes in policies. "We don't share footage," she said, and then she looked at my face and changed her mind. "But I can tell you if someone walked past your house late. They did. Around 1:40 a.m. Hood up. Same build as your brother. I don't want to get in family things. I just want you to be safe. You've already done more than most, I said. Thank you. Monday afternoon, I dressed like a man who needed boxes and drove to the Big Blue store, where a person can buy 100 things and forget why they came. I put 4 fire extinguishers in a cart. People saw me and nodded because it's always good to see someone prepare. I put 1 in the truck and 3 at the cabin. I checked every smoke detector twice. I changed batteries in the ones that beep every time you cook beef and butter. The house smelled clean, like plastic and promise. When I stopped by the land office to pay the small tax on the cabin, the clerk, who has decided we are cousins because our grandfathers might have known the same dog, leaned over the counter and lowered her voice. "A guy asked about your parcel," she said. "Said he was helping family price it. We don't give out any numbers, you know that. But I gave him a brochure about hunting rules and talked his ear off about fishing licenses until he went away." "What did he look like?" She described Evan's favorite jacket like it was a bird she'd seen once and drawn from memory. I wrote the date on an envelope back at home and added her name to the list. Every step made the next one easier to see. When you're young, you think revenge is a loud thing. It isn't. It's quiet work. It's a fence you fix on a weekday while the man who broke it brags at a bar. It's a folder getting heavy. I carried the folder to a detective whose wedding band was worn smooth and who rubbed his temples when language got slippery. He watched the video twice. He asked for names. He wrote dates. He looked at the still where the knife showed not like a movie but like a tool a fool used. He said we'd need more than feelings. I gave him receipts. He said we'd need more than receipts. I gave him witnesses. He said we'd need motive. I gave him a forged email and a matchbook from a bar where my brother gets thirst like some men get loyalty. "We'll open an investigation," he said. "We'll move slow. We move wrong when we move fast." "I want a file," I said. "I want a name on paper, mine and his. If something happens to the cabin, to my truck, to me, I want the next guy to have a map." "We can do that," he said. When I left the station, I drove to the creek instead of home. I sat on the bank and let the water throw its small language at the rocks. I remembered a day when we were boys and Evan, mad because I caught the only fish, loosened the cap on the fuel can we kept for the outboard. The motor died a mile out, and our father had to row us back with hands that worked a saw 6 days a week. He looked at us like it hurt him that we were his. After that, I checked caps twice. I learned that the person who laughs loudest is sometimes a man who can't hear himself. 2 weeks later, the 2 hikers met me at a diner, halfway between where they lived and where I did. They brought a phone with a note app full of bullet points and a calm that made me want to cry. They told me what they saw. They told me what they heard. They told me what they did when the rope swung in front of a stranger who was not ready to fall. "You saved my life," I said. It sounded like a line and not enough. "Nah," the taller one said. "You saved your life. We just threw a line." "Same thing some days," his friend said. "I paid for their pie. They let me." They left me with a napkin where they had written their full names, like "Signatures Matter Again," and a number where I could call if I needed to hear gratitude land somewhere besides my chest. News moves like water between stones. The story grew legs and met ears. It wasn't on TV yet, not then, but it walked through kitchens and offices and the shop where I buy bolts by the pound. People stopped me at the grocery and said, "I heard." People called me late and said, "Do you need me to sit in the yard for a night?" A neighbor 2 blocks away moved his camera to catch my alley just in case. Someone left a flashlight on my porch with a note that said, "Check batteries monthly." Evan stayed loud where he felt safe. He told his version of the cliff at a table where no one would disagree with a man buying the next round. He called it a scare. He called it a misunderstanding. He called it nothing. When a man uses 3 names for a thing that almost killed you, you learn to measure him by numbers. A letter came with the county seal. It said the request for footage had been granted. It said the camera saw 2 brothers leave a lot and 2 hikers follow a while later and 2 men return, one 6 minutes ahead of the other. It showed a knife clipped to a belt at the start, and no knife on the clip at the end. It was not a confession. It was a mirror. One late afternoon, I found sugar spilled like frost under my truck's gas cap. I didn't start the engine. I called a tow. The mechanic gave me a look like he had seen worse and didn't want me to know it. "Someone's trying to cost you," he said. "Maybe more than cost you." "I know," I said. He flushed the system and charged me less than the work was worth. He wrote the date on the invoice. I put the invoice in the folder. You can lose yourself in the grind of collecting proof. The problem is, proof doesn't tuck you in at night. Proof doesn't sit with you on the porch while the cicadas practice and the sky softens. A person has to live while he waits. I did small things I could complete. Fixed a hinge, oiled a window, patched a rip in the screen with thread from a spool my mother kept for shirts and Sundays. The house felt calmer with every tick I made on the list pinned to the fridge. I slept better when a door didn't squeal. The detective called. He said he spoke to Angela at Ridgeview, to the ranger about dates and logs, to the hikers again because juries care what strangers repeat, to the clerk at the land office who talked Evan into a fishing brochure because she knows how to move people out of rooms without violence. He said he needed to see the rope. I handed him a bagged coil I would never trust again. He said a lab would look at it, not like a snake, but like a paragraph. Evan sent a text, "You're ruining my life." I blocked the number. He emailed, "You're overreacting." I forwarded it to the detective and added it to the folder. He called from a number I didn't know. I let it ring. He knocked on my door. I kept the chain on and spoke through the gap. "Say accident, and I'll leave," he said. "I won't," I said. "You always thought you were better," he said. "I always thought I liked being alive," I said. He put his forehead to the door for a second. I felt the pressure in the wood. Then he lifted it and left. The porch light flickered when he stepped off the last stair, because the sensor has a delay. The morning after that, a deputy came by with a paper in a big envelope and a voice that sounded like a broom on a hallway. He asked if I would sign that I got it. I signed. It said my brother was to have no contact with me for a while. It said my address and his name, and a set of dates. It said words I had never wanted to know how to ask for. I sat with the paper on my knees and stared at the line where my name met his. I felt older and lighter at the same time. I called Ellie and told her a small part of the truth. She drove over that night with soup like her mother used to make and a stubborn stare I recognize in the mirror some mornings. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go slow," I said. "Now we let time and paper do their work." She slept on the couch with the TV on low, like a kid who meant to finish a movie. In the morning, she folded the blanket neatly and rinsed her bowl and kissed my head. "Don't be brave," she said. "Just be careful." "I'll be both," I said, "because I've lived long enough to know they aren't enemies if you introduce them right." Weeks gathered like leaves. The folder got thick. The creek at the cabin swelled with melt and then calmed. The cameras picked up deer, raccoons, a teenager in a red hoodie cutting through late, and once the shape of a man with a hood up moving down the driveway at 2 a.m., hands deep in pockets like he didn't need them. The face didn't show. The boots did. The boots looked like the print in the mud from a month before. The detective took the card, copied it, handed it back. The copy went into a file that sat in a drawer that makes a sound like a sigh when it closes. I built a small box and put the first flash drive inside and glued felt to the bottom and wrote Ellie on the lid. I placed it at the back of the top shelf, where only tall people look. I drove to the bank and opened a safe deposit box with the second drive and a letter that started with, "If you are reading this," and I didn't write the rest because I don't believe in curses and I didn't want to put one on the page. The detective called again. "We're going to bring him in to talk," he said. "You don't have to be here." "I know," I said. He went, he talked. He said too much and not enough. He contradicted himself the way men do when they lie often and practice little. He said banter and panic and joke. The detective listened. He didn't argue. He let the words pile where they could be sorted later. The charge came faster than I expected. I stood in my kitchen reading words that make your tongue feel heavy. People think the law is about fury. It isn't. It's about sentences balanced on the edge of a table, and the weight of proof pressed until a scale admits what it sees. I didn't cheer. I didn't call anyone who didn't need calling. I set the paper down and took out the trash because it was Thursday. 2 days later, he came to my porch again. He didn't hit the bell. He pounded like he wanted the door to bruise. "You did this," he said when I opened the inner door, leaving the chain on. "You tried to ruin me." "You did this," I said. "A camera kept the record. I didn't ruin you. You did." "You'll be sorry," he said. He said it like a child says it when he's been sent to his room. Across the street, Mrs. Daniels turned her porch light on and stepped out like a referee at the end of a match. "You all right, Cole?" she called. "I am," I said. He looked at her, then at me, then at his shoes. He walked away. The light clicked off. The night got itself back in order. When the date for the hearing arrived, I laid a suit on the bed. I touched the fabric like it could tell me what to do. I took the small drive from my neck and placed it in the inside pocket. I didn't need it. The detective had the copies. I carried it anyway. We keep tokens, not because they change outcomes, but because they keep hands busy when you can't change anything else. The courthouse steps felt shorter than they look from the street. Inside smelled like paper warmed by hands. The benches were hard. The clock ticked loud because clocks like to announce themselves in places where time matters. The hikers sat 2 rows behind me. The taller one gave me a small salute. I nodded. The detective sat on the aisle with a folder of his own, thicker than mine. Amanda, the prosecutor I'd only met once, slid into the seat beside me with a smile that didn't oversell anything. She said hello like we were neighbors at a fence. "Breathe," she said. "I'm trying," I said. "You've already done the hard part," she said. "You stayed alive." The bailiff spoke a number. We stood. The judge walked in with a face like a map you learn in school. He sat. We sat. The room got that special quiet again. Not a hush for drama. A pause for work. The kind of quiet a carpenter knows when the sauce stops and you check your measure. I looked at the door where Evan would walk through and I felt the old thing rise, a mix of anger and grief and the kind of pity that makes a man feel ugly. Then I let it go. I set my hands flat on my knees and watched the judge pick up a pen. At my house, he shouldered his bag and lingered on the porch. "You gonna tell Mom anything weird?" he asked, as if we were 16 again and trying to hide a broken lamp. "Mom's gone," I said. "You know that." He blinked, then recovered with a shrug. "Right. Habit. Well, maybe don't tell Ellie then. My daughter." He said her name like a coin he could spend. "I tell my daughter the truth," I said, "even when it's ugly." He smiled without teeth. "Don't be dramatic." He walked to his car and drove off before I could answer. The taillights slid away and took the last of my pity with them. In the living room, I set the camera on the table and watched the footage. Wind, rock, boots, his laugh, the knife, the line, the cut, the climb. The yellow rope swinging like a lifeline from a sky full of strangers, and then him at the top, hands on hips, pretending to search the pack while he looked everywhere but at me. I sat very still for a long time. People talk about rage like it's a fire. For me, it felt like frost. It spread slow, and even until all the old warmth was gone. What was left was something clean. Purpose. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to smash anything. I was going to do what I do better than Evan has ever done anything. I was going to show up. I copied the file twice, put one on a drive I wore on a chain around my neck, and sent the other to an email account I kept only for bad days. Then I showered until my hands stopped shaking. Ellie called that night. "How was the hike, Dad?" "Windy?" I said, and crowded near the top. She laughed. "You sound weird. You good?" "I'm good," I said. "You still coming by Sunday?" Wouldn't miss it. After we hung up, I opened a drawer and took out a folder I hadn't touched since my mother's funeral. It held our father's letters, brittle now, and a photo of 2 boys in hand-me-down coats standing by a creek with mud up to their ankles. I slid the folder to the side and placed a new manila folder on top. I wrote a single word on the tab: Evan. The next day I drove back to the trailhead with a thermos and a question. The rangers there knew me by sight. I brought them donuts a few times a year because I liked the way their faces softened when a box opened. I asked if any rescue calls had come in the afternoon before. "Nope," one said. "Quiet day. Beautiful sky. You heading out?" "Just grab some air," I said. "Hey, do those trail cameras still record by the picnic lot?" "Yup, motion triggered." "Why?" "Curious," I said, and bought a map I didn't need to make my curiosity look honest. I didn't ask to see the footage. I didn't need to. People get skittish when you start collecting too soon. Better to let the house get quiet before you ask questions. I visited the gear shop 2 towns over and bought a new rope. The boy at the counter had a good beard and gentle eyes. "What happened to the old one?" he asked, making conversation. "Caught on something sharp," I said. "Bad day," he said. Bad brother, I thought, and smiled without letting my eyes warm up. In the weeks that followed, Evan tried to pretend nothing had happened. He texted me links to weekend hikes and said dumb things like, "We should try that ridge next time." I responded with single words: busy, work, later. He didn't like later. Later isn't a place you can brag from. I started small. A message to the 2 hikers whose names I'd gotten as we parted, because I am the kind of man who asks. "Just checking in. Thanks again. Hope your dog healed up from the thorn in his paw. P.S. If you ever need to write what you saw for an insurance thing, would you be willing?" Both wrote back, "Of course, man. Glad you're okay. That guy with you was off. If you need a statement, we can do it." I put their notes in the folder. I asked a friend who works in town if public trails had public cameras. "Some," she said. "Why?" "Saw a bear." I lied. The lie felt ugly in my mouth, but it kept me from speaking the whole truth too soon. I printed the bank statements I still had access to from our mother's account, last year's hospice bills, the note from the cabin she left us in the mountains an hour west, the one Evan wanted to sell and I couldn't bear to. I stared at the totals until they went fuzzy, then looked away. Money is the oldest weather in a family. It sets seasons without asking. A month after the cliff, he came by unannounced. He did that more since Mom died. Her house used to be his stage, and mine had become the understudy. He knocked and then opened the door before I could answer, calling my name like we were still 10. He looked around like a buyer. "Got a minute?" he asked, already walking to the kitchen. "Not really," I said, and set a second mug down anyway, because manners win even when you'd rather they didn't. He talked fast. He always talks fast when he's sure he's right. "We need to decide about the cabin. The market's perfect. We list it now. We cash out. We both come out ahead. It's just sitting there, Cole, leaking, rotting. It's stupid." "It's home," I said, "and it's not rotting." He snorted. "It's a shack, brother. You keep old buildings the way other men keep bad habits." I let the insult sink and float away. "I'm not selling." He leaned back in his chair. "You're going to be difficult, aren't you?" "I'm going to be me." He smiled then, slow and wide, like a door opening in a dark room. "You know, sometimes accidents happen in old places. Pipes burst, trees fall, fires start." He sipped his coffee. "Insurance doesn't love empty houses." There it was. He said it like weather, but it was a map. I stared at him until he looked away. "Don't," I said. He laughed. "Relax, I'm joking. You're so serious. By the way, about the hike." "No." He blinked. "What, no?" "No," I repeated. It was the only word that mattered. "You don't even know what I was going to say. You were going to pretend it was nothing." He set the mug down too hard. "Prove it, Cole." The second time he said it, it didn't feel like a wall. It felt like an invitation. I didn't show him the video. I didn't want him rehearsing a new story. I wanted him to keep walking into the one he'd written. So I waited. And while I waited, I gathered. The ranger station confirmed the cameras had captured us, leaving the trailhead, 2 men with packs, one with a knife clipped to his belt. The hikers wrote formal statements, surprisingly careful with their words. He seemed eager to be seen helping. He kept saying, "We're fine," before the other man spoke. The rope looked frayed. We can't say how. We heard him say, "You're clumsy," and laugh. I took the footage, the statements, the timestamps, and the old letters that spoke of a cabin 2 boys had painted with their father one summer when their mother was tired and the sink didn't drain, and I put them all in a new folder labeled with the month. Then I went to see a detective. He was my age, with a tired wedding band and a notepad that looked older than his tie. I told him I wasn't here to make a scene. I just wanted to tell a story in the right room. He watched the video twice. The first time he leaned forward at the knife. The second time he closed his eyes when the laughter drifted down the rock. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want a record," I said. "I want someone besides me to know what I know. If my cabin goes up in the night, if my truck finds a ditch with no skid marks, if I fall on a quiet set of stairs, I want there to be a file that says a thing like, 'This happened once and it wasn't an accident.' I want his name and mine on paper where it matters." He nodded the way men nod when they don't have to ask who taught you to think like that. "We can open an investigation," he said. "It won't be fast. It never is. But we'll talk to your hikers. We'll pull the footage. We'll ask some questions he won't like." "Don't warn him for me," I said. "We don't warn," he answered. "We ask." I left the station and sat in my truck for a long time, hands on the wheel at 10 and 2 like my driver's ed teacher would have loved. The street outside gave me people to watch. A kid on a skateboard, a woman with a bag of oranges, a man holding 2 coffees, careful as eggs. The world went on. My hands stopped shaking. I didn't call Evan. I didn't tell Ellie. I didn't stir the pot. I went to work, came home, made soup, folded laundry, walked around the cabin on Sundays, fixing what needed fixing with the same quiet efficiency I had always had. I wasn't waiting on the law to save me. I was letting it catch up. It took 6 weeks. It could have taken 6 months. I would have waited. When the call came, I was replacing a hinge on the back door, the kind of job that looks like nothing but makes a day feel like it belongs to you. The detective's voice was flat. "We spoke to your hikers. We saw the camera footage from the lot. Your brother's card was used to buy a new knife the morning of the climb. Same brand we can see on the clip. We're going to bring him in. You don't need to be there." "I know," I said, and didn't move for a long time after I hung up. The screwdriver felt heavy in my hand. Then I picked it up and finished the job. The door swung silent and sure. I opened it twice just because. They didn't arrest him on a street with neighbors watching. They asked him to come in. He went, because he always believes he can talk a hole into being a ladder. He told them I was clumsy. He told them he panicked. He told them he brought a knife because he always does. He told them he couldn't remember if he cut anything. He told them a lot of things that disagree with each other. They didn't need me to contradict him. The video did it, the statements did it, the receipt did it. The cameras did it. His own mouth did it. They released him that day while they filed. That night he came to my house. He didn't knock. He pounded until my knuckles itched just hearing it. When I opened the door, he stood there breathing hard. "You went to the cops," he said. "I went to the truth. You ruined me." "You did that," I said, "on a cliff. If I go down, you go down," he spat. "No," I said. "You put a knife to a rope. I put a file on a desk." He leaned close, eyes bright with a kind of frantic that makes a man sloppy. "Say you made it up," he hissed. "Tell them you were confused." "I'm 52, I said. "I'm done pretending not to see." He raised his fist then, just enough to make the air between us curl, and that was all it took for the porch light across the street to flare on. Mrs. Daniels, who lives 3 houses down and has taught elementary kids not to throw rocks for 40 years, stepped onto her stoop and looked at us like we were boys at recess. "You all right, Cole?" she called. "I am," I said, and Evan lowered his hand because he has always been brave only when no one is watching. Court isn't fast. It walked like an old dog. But the charge was not small. You can call it whatever you want in your living room. Out loud in a courtroom, the words get heavier. Attempted, That's a short word for a long idea. You tried. You tried to end a life because you felt like it should end. I didn't tell anyone in our family, except Ellie. She listened without breathing for a while, then said, "I love you," the way a person says, "I believe you." On the morning of the hearing, I put on a jacket my mother bought me for my last big job interview, and I sat on a bench hard enough to make my back remember old injuries. Evan walked in with a lawyer who looked expensive and tired. He didn't look at me. Our eyes met once by accident and slid away like magnets the wrong way round. The hikers came, hats in their hands. They told the judge what they heard and saw. The detective played my video. The room did the same quiet it did on the cliff, not truly silent, but full of small sounds that didn't matter anymore. When the laughter rolled off the rock, and out the speakers and into the wood of the benches, something in the air changed. People know the grammar of cruelty when they hear it. His lawyer tried angles. He talked about panic, about banter, about brothers who tease. He mentioned my age like bones or excuses. He said the knife brand was common, the receipt was circumstantial, the clip could be coincidence. He said a lot of things that sound comfortable if you've never been cold. The judge didn't rush. He watched the video again. He looked at the rope, bagged and tagged. Its belly burst into a frizz that made something in my teeth ache. Then he looked at Evan and spoke in a level voice that carried better than shouting. "You are fortunate a stranger's rope came down that cliff," he said. "You are fortunate your brother is alive. The law is not a sandbox. Words like joke don't wash blood off a stone." Conviction didn't feel like triumph. It felt like air returning to a room where someone has been talking too loudly. Sentencing would come later. Papers, programs, fines, whatever the court saw fit. I didn't sit there and make a list of punishments I wanted to watch. I listened to the gavel and thought of a ledge the size of a mailbox. The legal part wasn't the twist I saved for last. The world should punish dangerous men. That's not a surprise. That's a baseline. The twist was for my family, what was left of it, and for the place that had almost turned into a gravestone with my name on it. I went to the cabin the next morning with a thermos and a folder and a man from a local land trust who had hands like mine. We walked the perimeter while the frost melted into our boots. He asked me about the stones, the trees, the window my father and I had replaced with glass we drove an hour to get because the hardware store in town didn't carry the right size. I told him everything because saying it out loud pinned it to the earth. Back in the kitchen, we signed paperwork that did what my brother had wanted, and feared at the same time. It took the cabin off the table. Land trust would hold the deed. The structure would be maintained. The trails kept. The place used by kids who wanted to know what the sky looks like when you don't have a ceiling. In return, the trust would name a program after my mother, who never got to see the creek in winter because life kept her inside with too many bills and not enough breath. When it was done, I called Ellie to tell her we had just saved a building and a piece of ourselves. She cried the way good news makes people cry when they've been carrying bad. The news did what news does when a story has a cliff and a knife and an ending that makes a town talk. Someone at the station called. They wanted to air a piece, not for the crime, although they'd mention it, but for the program the cabin would become. A place where kids who don't have gear can come learn how to walk on rock without falling into emptiness. Where rangers can teach knots that hold and words that save. We taped the segment at golden hour because television loves a sky that tries. The reporter asked me what the cabin meant. I told her it meant the same thing my house means, the same thing any roof does. Promise. That you'll be there when someone comes home. That you'll answer when someone knocks. That you won't cut what holds when the wind is up. They asked if my brother wanted to comment. He didn't. His lawyer spoke for him and said bland rectangles of language, the way lawyers do when their client can't be trusted with his own mouth anymore. Sentencing came a month later. The judge looked tired. So did I. He talked about classes, supervision, about a no-contact order that clicked like a lock in my ear. He talked about community service and restitution, and the way men can learn if they want to, although not all do. I didn't look at Evan when it ended. I looked at the exit and walked toward it and felt something like a rope go slack, but in a way that made my knees stronger. The very last piece, the one I kept in my pocket like a coin with a hole drilled through it, waited for a Saturday morning in spring. The land trust held a small gathering at the cabin with hot chocolate that burned tongues and a banner that made me blush. Kids ran in the yard and slid in the mud and didn't care that their shoes were getting ruined, because that's what shoes are for. I spoke for 5 minutes because that's how long an old man can talk before kids get itchy. I thanked the people who brought rope and maps and patience. I said my mother's name. I said my father's once. I didn't say my brother's. I didn't have to. When the kids went inside to hear about weather and how not to be a fool in it, the reporter from the station pulled me aside. "We're going to air the full piece tonight," she said. "Do you want to say one line that sums it up?" I looked at the creak in the windows and the door. My father hung a little crooked because time was tight that day, and the level was at my uncle's place. I thought about a cliff, and a laugh, and a rope that looked like a wound. Then I thought about a yellow line dropping from an open sky when strangers decided to be family. "Tell them this," I said. "My brother tried to make the mountain choose for him. I chose for myself." That night, my phone buzzed with messages from people who used to sit on our porch and talk about baseball, and people who sold me nails, and people who taught my daughter multiplication. They said the same thing in different ways. "Proud of you, Cole. Glad you stayed. You did it right." I slept with the windows cracked and the furnace low, and the kind of quiet that doesn't make you feel small. In the morning, I made coffee and took it to the porch and watched the day make a promise to the road. I haven't seen Evan since the sentence. The no-contact order does the heavy lifting, so my heart doesn't have to. I hear things in a small town because towns are sieve and sponge at once. He moved 2 counties over. He changed jobs twice. He tells people different versions of his life depending on what he wants from them. That's a lot of work. I hope he gets tired. Sometimes, on a hike, I'll feel the urge to look over my shoulder and check for a shadow at the edge. Then I remember I'm older than I was, not weaker, that a man's safety isn't a person he can trust with a knife, but a memory he can trust with a plan. On the mantel there's a single photo in a plain frame, not of the cliff, not of Court. It's of Ellie at the cabin door with a mug the size of her face, laughing because a dog shook rain all over her jeans. The banner in the background says my mother's name, and the word program and the letters tilt a little like my father's door. It's not perfect. It's ours. The other day, a kid at the hardware store asked me if I still climb. I told him I still go up when the sky looks like it wants to be held. "Aren't you scared?" he asked truthfully, because fear is a tool he's still learning to use. "Sometimes," I said, "I'm scared of the right things." He nodded like I gave him a secret. Maybe I did. When I close my eyes at night, I don't hear his laughter echo off stone anymore. I hear the sound of a rope paying out steady and a voice from above me, someone I didn't know, shouting, "We've got you." That's the sound I saved. That's the lesson I kept. In the end, my brother gave me a gift he never wanted me to have. He taught me that some bonds are just knots you tie in your own hands to keep yourself still when the ground gives way. He taught me that family is not a mouth that says your name, it's hands that don't let go. He tried to write my ending with a knife. I wrote it with patience. And when the truth finally spoke, it didn't need to shout. It simply stood where everyone could see it, and he fell all by himself. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe and join Taste of Revenge family, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on one of the boxes on the right. Thank you for watching to the end.